Welcome to MyLITV. From Manhasset to Montauk, we have traveled our communities to bring you the following events. I'm your host, Waldo Cabrera. MyLITV starts now. Instrumental guitar rock star Joe Satriani played in his hometown of Westbury, Long Island, and he invited friends from the neighborhood to the sound check.
Welcome home, Joe.
Welcome home, Joe.
Welcome home, Joe.
Welcome home, Joe.
Hey, Joe. Welcome home.
You know, the guys in the band are all very curious about this place, this town. They've been asking me questions about, you know, tell us all the times you got in trouble over here and over there. Because everywhere I look, there's a memory, you know. I grew up in a little spot of Westbury that was part of the Carr Place school district. So I wound up going to Carr Place High School, the public school there. You know, I've got two towns that I call my hometown. The space at Westbury was just a regular family movie theater when I was growing up, about a mile away from here. I often call that, you know, my career as an instrumental rock guitarist as an accidental career, because I was playing that kind of music at home, but I called it, you know, personal development music, while I was trying to be a real professional musician in bands that were vocal-oriented rock bands. In a moment of contrarian thought, I started thinking, well, I should just see what happens if I put it out. A friend of mine came to a rehearsal with a copy of Guitar Player magazine and was laughingly saying, hey, you're famous. They reviewed your record, you know, and they were like, you have a record? And I didn't know, because I didn't tell anybody.
Performing live as an instrumental band didn't come easy.
When Surfing with the Alien came out, and the record company asked me to tour behind it, I told them that I'd never done it before. I didn't know what it was like to stand on stage as an instrumentalist. I'd always been in rock and roll bands with singers. And then once we got on stage, before we went out, I remember Stu Hahn and Jonathan Mover and we looked at each other like, well, what are we going to do? Do we run around? It was just like, every gig was a new thing, a learning experience. And we just kind of, we learned what my career was going to become night by night.
Coincidentally, Joe just wrote his first book.
There you go, man. Great book.
My friend Sammy Hagar just put out a book, but his book was crazy. I mean, there was some crazy stuff in his life that reads like what you would expect a rock and roll book to read about. And I mentioned that to Jake, and he said, well, no, we're not going to write that kind of a book. We're going to write a book about your creative process, and we're going to focus on each one of the albums. And I thought, well, that sounds more like me. And there were cathartic weeks, you know, where I had a lump in my throat just thinking about days I didn't want to remember in detail, you know, from all these years of when life interrupts making music.
As a companion piece to the book, Joe released a box set of his studio recordings.
Independently, the guys at Legacy and Sony came up with the idea for a box set. About 6 months later, we agreed on both sides, okay, well, I'll do this book and I'll do the box set. So eventually, you know, the publisher, Ben Beller, and Sony and Legacy understood that we had something that was special and it should be time to come out at the same time.
Backstage, kids from his old high school anxiously await to hear the tricks of the trade.
The biggest trick of the trade is finding out there are no tricks of the trade, you know. It's pretty simple but hardcore practicing that gets you where you are. You do have to be prepared for success if you're lucky enough to have it. If you're not prepared, it just passes you by, goes to the next guy, you know.
I started listening to him on YouTube and stuff like that, and I just love his music.
What did you think of the sound check? It was really awesome. Like, I've heard all of his songs before on record, but it was nothing compared to seeing him live.
Ultimately, Joe wants the kids to walk away with one simple lesson.
The lessons I learned in high school stayed with me forever, and they were the most important musical lessons. So that's part of what I'm going to let them know is listen to your teachers now, because this is the foundation period where some of the most interesting and profound observations about music and your own musicianship, they're going to be discovered and they're going to be found, and you're going to build on them.